We'll jump right into it. So thank you everybody for joining us today for the Google Data Studio and Google Ads class with Chris here. He's going to go through, we do have the chat off to the side, and then we do also have a Q&A. You guys are free to ask any questions in either of those. I'll be keeping an eye out for anything that pops up there. Chris will try to answer them as he goes. Otherwise, we'll just do a collective at the end. So hand it over to Chris so we can get started.
Cool, awesome. Thanks, Allie. And just kind of one thing Allie was talking about questions, how I'm thinking about doing this is just if you have a question, first of all, type it into the chat box. And then every about 15 minutes or so, I'm going to kind of take a break and answer all the questions all at once. And so just the more questions also you guys ask, the better this whole presentation is going to be. And kind of one of the ideas is this is the kind of only the second of our whole series. And so I'm kind of still getting a feel for it, but I don't have a great idea of exactly what everyone wants to get out of this class. And so one thing I was kind of thinking we could just start off by doing is if there's anything in particular you guys really want to learn when it comes to Google Data Studio or Google Ads, type it in the chat box just to kind of get going. That way I can be sure to bring this stuff up and make sure everyone like kind of gets exactly what they came to find. And so yeah, just more questions, the better. I'm not going to be able to answer the questions right away, but we'll get to them about every 15 minutes or so. Yeah, the other thing I wanted to do is just give a big shout out thanks to DoSpace and specifically Allie, our moderator, and also Allison. But kind of the whole, before I even get into the presentation for it, I just want to talk about kind of like the mission of DoSpace and kind of how it was explained to me. And basically the whole idea was there's so many people, who have lost their jobs in 2020 because of the pandemic. And like, unfortunately, a lot of those jobs are not coming back. And so DoSpace said, hey, we got to start teaching people, kind of like training people new skills. And that's kind of the whole spirit of this thing is just, how can we sort of get the whole workforce mobilized, new stuff, new skills, specifically online digital skills. And so I think that's just an awesome mission. And be sure to definitely check out a lot of the other webinars and workshops on the DoSpace's calendar. There's a lot of really cool stuff. And that kind of brings me to this next point of just what we're going to be talking about in today's episode. Of course, the class is called Google Data Studio and Google Ads for Beginners. And so, of course, we're going to be learning about Google Data Studio, Google Ads. One of the ideas is to get reports up and running as fast as possible. Of course, Google Data Studio, we're going to talk more about this in depth, but really what that is just kind of a platform to help people make sense of kind of different data sources. And so it's going to be confusing at first. Of course, that's why we're at this class, so we can learn exactly how it all fits together. But basically at the end of the class, one of the goals is you guys are going to have an actual report that's linked to a Google Ads account. And so at the end, you can be able to connect it. Like if you already work for a company that's doing Google Ads and you want to kind of just learn the skills so you can immediately apply it, we're totally going to cover all that at the end of this. You can kind of go from doing reports on Excel, doing it, which is kind of tedious. It's a lot of work. You got to do it every day, copy paste stuff, to you'll just have this one awesome report that's already set up, automatically updates. And my other two notes I had here is, this might not be the best way to say it. I'm still kind of figuring this out, but I want to talk about some hard skills and soft skills. And what I mean by this, hard skills is kind of like, in my mind, data studio design, Google Ads basic, connecting platforms, something where there's sort of like a right or wrong answer. right or wrong way to do things. And of course, that's what we're going to be hitting on a lot in the second half of the class. Um, but also on top of that, there's a lot of kind of soft skills. And what that is more along the lines of just, okay, once you have a Google Ads account up, once we have a report that's kind of showing what's going on, how do you actually communicate that to the other people in your workspace, other people you're working with? Because, if you have a cool design, if you have a cool report, you're doing fine in your ads, but if you can't like get other people bought into it, your success is going to be really limited. And so even just kind of talking with other data studio people, a lot of them, I just noticed some people are really good at like the coding, the developing, but they kind of lack the ability to really like communicate what's going on. And so within this class, I wanted to just kind of hit on both of these. And the other item I had here is Zoom tips and tricks. And just kind of what I meant by this is a lot of times once you become good at data studio, you're probably going to be doing it a lot through these Zoom sessions, right? And so like when I first started, I would kind of print more stuff off, or when I do these presentations, I would be right there working with my clients or my bosses. But just kind of as I've had to go through Zoom, I had a lot of like struggles just early on, learning exactly what to do, what not to do. And so I think even if you can just learn like a few Zoom tips or tricks, that can be totally worth it. And I'm going to hit on this more when we get to the end. Um, and so the other idea here is we want to learn by doing. And so kind of how this class is going to be set up today, the first half, I'm just going to have a little kind of Google Slides presentation. Google Slides is very similar to Microsoft PowerPoint. We're just going to go, okay, like, what is Google Ads? What is Google Data Studio? How does all this stuff actually kind of fit together? And then the second half of class is, okay, once we know kind of like just enough to get started by going over this big picture, we're just going to go dive right into the details. We're going to go from like 100,000-foot view, woo, zoom right into all these little details. And so how I have it set up is the second half, once we get out of the PowerPoint presentation, we're going to just kind of, you guys are just going to kind of watch me create a whole Google Data Studio report. And how I have it set up is this report, it already exists. By the way, there's a whole link in the chat. You can see it says link to today's Data Studio worksheet. I want everyone to open that link. That's going to kind of be what we're going over later in the second half. And anyways, what that all includes is kind of this automated report that we're going to be setting up. The only thing is that the report's been scrambled, which means I kind of went through and messed it up on purpose. And then the other part is this worksheet. And the worksheet is just going to be, okay, instructions step by step. How do we take this ugly scrambled worksheet and turn it into like a fully automated Google Data Studio report that you could show to your boss, show to your clients, and just literally use like today at the end of this class. And so this is sort of the whole agenda. And again, just please type in your questions, anything you want to get out of today. Again, we're going to go over Google Ads. That's just a lot of people have no idea kind of the scope of Google Ads. And so today it's not going to be so much like how it works or how to set up or my advice. It's just going to be kind of very high level overview of Google Ads. And in fact, the real purpose of the course is this thing, Google Data Studio, which is creating these automatic dashboards. And one other point I want to just make is we only have 1 hour today. And in my mind, 1 hour is really not enough time to learn all this stuff: Google Ads, Google Data Studio, how to kind of connect it and communicate it. And so it's going to go a little bit fast. And there definitely are going to be moments where people are confused, but that's totally normal. That's just the sign you're learning. And probably how it'll be is I'm going to bring up some concepts in this first half. And then in the second half, it's going to be here's how it actually applies to the real world. And so, without any ado, let's go on to this next slide. And I just want to kind of tell you guys a little story about my own first Google Ads account. Since the idea is a lot of you guys are going to be doing this for the first time in your new jobs after you learn these incredible new skills. And anyway, just kind of like a little backstory about myself. Currently, what I actually do, I run a company called Click Targeter. And what I do, I'll just give myself a little kind of promotion, get it out of the way. But basically, I just help people that do Google Ads and Facebook ads, all these different Microsoft ads. And I kind of just take care of every little single detail for them, do everything. And then one of the tools I use in my business is just Google Data Studio, which I'll be showing you guys later. And how I use that is just kind of communicating to my people exactly how they're doing in their Google Ads account. But anyways, I only say that to kind of set up my own backstory, own history. And so just kind of want to tell you about the first time I did my Google Ads account. So this way you guys can know what to expect. And just a little bit of like backstory about myself. I always wanted to be successful and do something online, learn how to make money. But when I started, there wasn't like a real clear path. And I would say there's still not really a clear path for people that want to learn these skills. And so my idea was, hey, I'm just going to go work for whoever kind of will take me, do an internship. I'll just do whatever. And so kind of work myself up. And so I did a lot of like email, website, all different kinds of stuff. And I finally got my kind of like first legit online marketing job. And so, by the way, these two pictures, these are just kind of like the different emotions I felt within doing my own Google Ads experience. And I'm going to kind of hit on both of them in the story. But basically, I've been doing a lot of kind of jack of all trades, marketing, internships, and never really was like super duper successful. But then finally I got a job at it was a pretty big information marketing company in Omaha. I won't say their name, but kind of they hired me to run their Google Ads account and also to do reporting. And how I would say reporting, just think of that as kind of, I would have to go into a lot of sheets, copy something and paste it into an Excel. And sort of boring, but just basically I had to demonstrate to my bosses I sort of knew what was going on. And then on top of that, I was also doing the Google Ads account. Back then it was actually called Google AdWords, by the way. So if you hear me say Google AdWords, sometimes I just mix these two up and call it by the old name. But anyways, I just remember this job because I was like, I finally felt like I was kind of successful at something, and I was getting the hang of the Google Ads, and I was getting the hang of this reporting. And anyways, we would have these meetings each month, and the meetings were always with the guy who owned the company. And this guy, by the way, who's like an absolute legend in the marketing and technology field. I'll give him a shout out. His name's Vin Gupta. And a lot of people in Omaha know Vin because he's created literally like thousands of jobs in Omaha. He's kind of one of the reasons Omaha has become a little bit of an undercover data information hub. And anyways, this is a guy who was born and raised in India in a town with no running water. And he ends up making his way to America becoming like multi-millionaires, super duper successful. And anyways, I had to go in front of this guy and kind of like show him what I was doing. And I remember I was actually super duper excited for our first meeting because I felt like I had been doing well with this Google Ads. You know, I had my report that sort of proved how well I was doing. Was like all dressed up, ready to go. And, you know, on top of this, I also had some like suggestions looking over the ads. Basically, a lot of times in Google Ads, it's like, okay, hey, of the 5 ads we're running, 3 of them are not very good, which is bad. But then, hey, if there's 2, it can be a situation like, hey, every dollar we're spending, we're making like $2 or $3. In which case, you really want to like spend a lot more on those, obviously. And anyways, I just say this because I, you know, had kind of like my suggestions on exactly what to do. Anyways, we go into the board meeting and everyone, I kind of give my report. And I didn't know this, but every other person also gave the owner Vin their own reports. And so what I mean is they kind of had like the email person, the sales guys. And anyways, I remember this. He takes all the sheets, he kind of looking at all of them, and he goes, all right, which one of you guys are lying to me? And I was like, what do you mean? Who's lying to you? Definitely not me. And by the way, a little background. The only reason I got this job was because the person before me had gotten fired on the spot in one of these meetings because they weren't kind of able to explain what was going on. So needless to say, I was like a little bit nervous, right? And then when they say, who's lying to me? It's like, whoa, this is definitely kind of this first picture. You know, I quickly went from confident to, whoa, what do you mean? But basically the point he was making is it was true. All these reports didn't add up. And what he says is like, hey, I know exactly how many new clients we've had this last month. And in my report, I was saying, oh, hey, what I did brought in like 20 new people. And he was saying, looking at each one of these guys' reports, it makes it seem as if there's like twice as many sales as there actually was. And he said, not only am I not happy with you, but like all these suggestions I had brought in, he said, no, we're not doing that until you guys can just like all get on the same page. And so obviously that like hurt me, just kind of like my own self-esteem or whatever. But also I really believed it kind of like held back the company because it's like, you know, they weren't able to capitalize on kind of the stuff that works. And anyways, I just remember like after that meeting, I was just sitting in my car and I just kind of had this like, just something became really clear to me. And that was that, you know, just being good at AdWords and being good at making these reports, sometimes that's not enough, right? Like I was talking earlier about these hard skills and the soft skills. Like you can get good at the hard skills of doing Google Ads, doing these reports, but if you really can't get people to buy in, then you're never going to be successful. And like it was felt so weird to me because it was like, man, I had failures before this, and it's like I'd finally gotten good. And then it's like, oh my God, that's almost not enough either. And anyways, kind of like came up with this plan. I really needed to get everyone to like buy in. And so we kind of set up a system each month, kind of get together with my immediate supervisors. I kind of had to teach them the basics. And so I thought this was a very good plan, but of course there was so many conflicts along the way, just basically having to get everyone on the same like language. That's really tricky. And then the other thing I figured out is, hey, in these Google Ads, it turns out I didn't even have it set up right. And I probably would never figured out I had it set up wrong unless I had these meetings and actually kind of like shown someone my ideas and then have them kind of call me out. It's like, Chris, this does not really add up. What's going on? And anyways, I only kind of say that because um, now I've kind of become the person who says, hey, who's lying to me? Right? Like I am that new then in a way, running my own company, because now I'm the one who's getting all these kind of different conflicting reports. And a lot of times I can see I really need someone to like explain all this, like what is actually going on. And just one other note I want to have right here is, um, the kind of going back to that initial moment, man, I need to get everyone on the same page. We need to come up with this report. Um, Kind of that's also the origin of the click targeter templates that I've created on Google Data Studio. And I'm going to hit on this a little bit further in the presentation, but kind of like one of the ways I'm qualified for teaching this class is I've actually created it's pretty popular template in this Data Studio gallery. And again, more on this later, but without after having these like actual meetings and presenting your report to someone and then kind of having them knock it down and having to go back to the workshop and come back out, like you're never going to be that good. And it's like, even if you do have a good worksheet, like it's not just these hard skills, but almost more important is the ability to kind of communicate exactly what's going on. Right. And so the whole idea of this course is kind of just to take everyone here from this crazy guy who is freaking out. you know this is probably me getting ready for that meeting, trying to make sense of everything, to after we finally get people bought in and finally have some success. uh it's an awesome thing. It feels really fun. And so here's again, the spirit is not, it's kind of just help you guys get along the same path I was on, but just avoid some of the mistakes and say, hey, don't go down that road, go down here. And of course, back when I had this first job, Google Data Studio didn't even exist. And so, of course, I always wanted to not have to do the reports and just have that automatically update. And so, anyways, I think I only kind of say this to give a little bit of myself, but also kind of help you guys imagine what it's going to be like when you get your first job doing this stuff. All right. Anyways, I just want to give a kind of quick overview of what is Google Ads. And I just want to start off by showing you what they look like. And so here's a Google search ad. This is kind of the most common thing people think of. Of course, when you type any search into Google, there are some ads that will show up on top of just the free results. But on top of the search ads, there's also these display ads. And I would say just think of display ads as like image ads. And so this is a screenshot I took yesterday from Omaha World Herald. And I just have a big red block around these two ads. Here's Harry's. Click on this, get some razors. Right here, Tommy's Car Wash. Not quite sure what that is. But just think display ads or kind of picture ads. And then the other point I wanted to make here is that, of course, the search ad, this is on Google. But then these display ads, they're actually on all these different websites all across the internet. And so not only is Google, these search ads, right? Google has partners with so many websites all across the internet. And it's just as many display ads as it is search. And then finally, the third kind of ad Google has is video ads. Google owns YouTube. And so oftentimes I love watching YouTube. I always have it was clicking the skip ad button. But just the point here is not only can you do search, not only display, we can also do video. And then one other thing is just in the corner here, we have another ad, but this is a display ad. And so even within YouTube, there's search and display ads. Just think of display as pictures. And okay, so now we kind of know what Google Ads looks like. We got our search, display, video. The next point I want to make, and people don't really get this, is how enormous Google Ads is and how profitable it is. Basically, they have like not really that many costs of running this. And in 2019, Google made $135 billion from advertising. And of course, this is all through Google Ads. And so 135 billion, that's so hard to even conceptualize. But just the point is like Google Ads is massive and it's on a trend where it just keeps getting bigger and bigger. And in fact, that's why I threw in this little second graph, and it's just kind of TV versus newspapers versus magazine, radio, internet, kind of traditional ads versus online ads in the same period. And really the takeaway here is all these other TV, newspaper, magazine, people are spending less and less and less on the traditional ads, and the internet, that just keeps going up and up and up. And in fact, it went from 4% of all ads to 45% of all ads, keep going on. And just kind of, you'll notice, hey, this graph is very similar to the Google ads. Most of advertising dollars are actually spent through Google ads. And so if you take nothing else away from this, I just want you to realize how enormous Google ads is. And it's almost as if it's kind of taking up all the different forms of traditional advertising. And benefits of online ads versus traditional ads. This is just kind of like my opinion as to why that's the case and why all advertisers are kind of going away from traditional ads to Google ads. And this first one is its pay-per-click model. And it's kind of confusing to communicate this with people. The most common question I get is, hey, how much does Google ads cost? Kind of before I answer that, traditional ads, how you, like for example, in a newspaper or magazine, you have to pay the newspaper all your money at once. The Your audience is just going to be, hey, whoever reads this newspaper is going to be the people that see your ads. It's kind of hard to prove results in the newspaper. What they say is, hey, just kind of be aware of how your sales go up or down. And if it goes up, well, that's because of us. And if not, it's, it's not our fault. And anyways, with Google ads, how it's different is pay per click. So instead of paying all the money up front, you kind of pay as you go. And how it actually works is each time someone clicks on your ad, you have to pay. And so a lot of times when you're on Google, search something, you'll click on an ad and you won't even realize, but someone may have just paid like up to $10 for a single click. So pay per click, we'll kind of talk a little bit more about this later. Targeted audiences. So in the past, I said everyone, if you advertise on Omaha World Herald, just all the readers see it. But now you can say, hey, I want to show my ads on Omaha World Herald, but I just actually only want to show it to guys, or maybe I just want to show it to people who have kind of been on my website already. The point is that even within the different video, search, display ads, you can even get a lot more targeted. Hey, I only want to show it to kind of these people watching the videos. And then, so that's cool. But on top of that, there's also kind of the ability to better prove results. And this is what we're going to be doing with the reports today. The idea is just, you can kind of work backwards and see, hey, of everyone who bought something on my site, everyone who maybe signed up to have us reach out to them, how many of them actually like came from Google ads? You can kind of get an idea of what worked, what doesn't. And then the last one is just Google Ads is massive. And so if you actually do have success, one of the things that's really, really cool is like since basically everyone in the world uses Google, you can just make your audience bigger and bigger and bigger. And so once you find something that works, it's just like, let's, you know, if you have an ad where it's like, hey, every dollar I'm spending, I'm making $2. The thing that's cool about Google is, hey, well, let's start ramping this up and let's start making more money. And so, okay, we got, whoa. Okay, I'm a little bit behind, so I'm just going to kind of go through this quick. But yeah, Google Ads, we've talked a lot about this already. It's a pay-per-click advertising platform. And what I mean by ad platforms is some of the competition. This is sort of the most common that I've seen are Facebook ads right now. People love Facebook. It's very popular. But with Facebook, keep in mind, that's really just display image ads. There's not so much search. And then there's Microsoft ads, AKA Bing ads. And this is really cool. It's just search ads. So with Google ads, we can do search and display. But on these big competitors, you can kind of really only do one or the other. And so the pros of Google ads versus the competitors are it's just the biggest. So when you find success, you can really scale it. There's multiple ad types, get targeted. But then the cons of Google ads is it's becoming really expensive. And just the more people, basically the more people that are advertising on Google in this pay-per-click format, the more competition, like the more competing, more people that are advertising on your term, the more you're going to have to pay. And I don't want to get too much into this because it's kind of what I have to explain how Google Ads works. But just kind of one of the cons right now is it's becoming really expensive, more and more expensive every day to advertise on Google. And so if you don't know exactly what's working, what's not, you can kind of get burned. And then my final note here is just the principles of Google Ads and kind of how it works also apply to all these other platforms. So meaning if you figure out how Google Ads works, you're going to have a great idea when you start doing Microsoft ads, Facebook ads. And anyways, the principles we're learning today translate to all of those other platforms. Google Data Studio, this is what we're doing today. It's just a platform that turns data into customizable, cool dashboards and reports. And right here, there's a little kind of video explanation. This guy is filtering his data. You can see when he's saying, hey, I only want to see data from the last 7 days. Actually, let's see the last 14 days. And it just automatically updates. And so when I was talking earlier, when I had to like do reporting, copying and pasting things every single day, you know, if you can go from Google Excel to Data Studio, you're going to have a free hour every single day. Okay, so the competing data visualizers, the two most common I hear are Tableau and Microsoft BI. Basically, these things do the exact same thing, but why Data Studio is cool is it's totally free, where Tableau and Microsoft BI are probably about like at least $70 a month. And so kind of the pros, obviously it's free. It has Google level security. And so it's all run through Google, and Google's pretty secure. And so that's a big plus of this. It's easy to use. Kind of the flip side of Data Studio being easy to use is it's just a little bit simpler than other platforms, meaning it just doesn't have as much stuff. It doesn't have as many charts, or just like, just less powerful. And so that's obviously bad if you're like a super advanced user. But for people who are more beginners, I think Data Studio is the way to go. Because you don't have to pay. You know, I've been doing this for 5 years or so, like 5 years, $70 a month. That wouldn't be great. But then the thing is, by doing Data Studio, I've actually like am pretty good at Tableau and Microsoft BI because I know all these kind of like underlying principles, right? And so that's again what you guys are going to be learning here. And really my point on this one is kind of these principles, they apply to Google Data Studio, but it's also all these other platforms that you might be using on your next job. And so, okay, here's just kind of how it works. Man, I'm a little behind schedule, so I'm going to go slow or going to go quick here. But first step is we got to get Google Ads talking to Google Data Studio. And how we can do this is we can get it automatically connected, or if not, we can go through Microsoft Excel. And so step one, get everything connected. Now I have step 0. I know this is in the wrong order, but I wanted to have this. And so kind of even before we get to the next part of Google Data Studio, one thing I wanted to say is for Google Ads to really work at its full power, you want to kind of have it connected to your credit cards. And what I mean is you want to know exactly how much money you're spending and then how much money you're making from those Google Ads, right? We want to get these 3 things connected, but you can't really connect Google Ads straight to the credit cards. In fact, there's kind of some intermediary steps, Google Analytics, online sales. And I really just want to bring this up because a lot of times the problems people have when they're creating their own Data Studio reports is not really with Data Studio itself, but it's just kind of behind the scenes. And I guess I would say any report that you create is only as good as the data you have in the first place, right? And what I mean is, hey, if your Google Ads isn't connected to your Google Analytics and all this stuff, your end reports are not going to be as good. But anyways, step 1, connect Google Ads to Data Studio. Hopefully Google Ads is set up right behind the scenes. Anyways, once we have everything connected, step 2 is actually create our report. This is what we're going to be doing here in a second. And these pictures, what these are different components. And again, we'll have kind of a more in-depth, it'll make more sense when you can see me kind of doing my thing. But just some example components within our charts, we can have a table, we can have charts, we can put in pictures, we can have scorecards, that's just like a little simple number. And then we can have shapes. And so what this is actually 2 scorecards on top of a shape. And so you can start combining things. We have controls, and that's kind of what makes reports interactive. So connect Google Ads to Data Studio. Once we have everything connected, we're going to go in and add tables, charts, images, controls. And then the last step, so here's kind of the report style I created. It's called Click Targeter. But one of the things I do is I just automatically email myself this report every day. I also email it to all my clients so they can see how they're doing. And then you'll notice like this report is actually empty, but I still like to just double check it because sometimes I've had something break or something and I wasn't able to figure it out for like a month. But anyways, by setting myself the report each week, I can always kind of like catch things before it gets too out of hand. Anyways, other ways we can share is download the report and print it off. This is something that's like the more you print off, the better your reports are. It's collaborative, so just like a Google Doc. And what I mean is you can obviously share your report with people who want to see it, but you can also share your report with other people to work on the report. And then the final things is once you create your report, you can embed it on websites. So how a lot of ad agencies are using Google Data Studio is kind of the industry term is white labeling it. And how they'll specifically do this is they'll make a little like page on their own website where people have to type in a password. And on this password protected page, there, that's where they'll have their Google Data Studio report. And so for the end users, it'll look like, oh, wow, this is just part of these guys' really fancy website. And they have no idea sometimes that they're even using a program, Google Data Studio. And so that's another way it's really cool. And so kind of before I get on to the next section of the class is just 3 principles for report design. This is sort of my own opinion. But number 1, each report should have a clear title, data source, date range. This is sort of basic. Sort of the reason I have is one of the most common points of confusion for me is when it comes to AdWords, I'll be looking at something on my Zoom and I'll be going over it. And then people will say, Chris, I'm looking at the same report, but all the numbers are different. What's going on? And so often the cause of that confusion is just people are looking at the same report, same numbers, but different dates. And so the more clear you can be on, here's the exact dates I'm looking at, here's the exact data I'm looking at, the less kind of confusion people will have. And I'll just say there's kind of like a lot of different ways this can become confusing. But just doing these 3 things across the board, it's going to put you kind of a good step forward. Anyways, principle 2, lead to real world change. And how I think of this is I always like to ask myself a question. Okay, knowing what I know now after looking at this report, what do I actually do different moving forward? And so specifically for Google Ads, it'll be like, okay, knowing what we know now, kind of where should we spend more money and where should we spend less money? And so kind of going back to my story, I was talking about when I presenting my report to the boss, like my whole point was like, hey, I had some suggestions, like kind of knowing what I know now, here's where I think we should be spending more money. And basically the reason I like to ask myself this question is sometimes I'll have created a report, but it won't really like have a clear, like, what do we do different? And if you find yourself working on a report like that, chances are it's just a complete waste of time, right? So what I mean is kind of going back to that meeting, like had I presented the report and then they asked me, okay, well, so what do we actually do different? And I said, well, I don't know. It'd be like, well, Chris, why? What have you been doing this whole time? What do you mean you don't know? Like, just basically, if you're creating a report and you can't answer, how does this actually like impact the real world? You might be wasting your time. And so I've wasted too much time doing this. So I always like to ask that. And then step 3 is don't reinvent the wheel and start at the Google Data Studio template gallery. Ooh, okay. And so, man, I noticed there's no chats. Please, you guys, please type in your questions. I'm running a little bit behind here. And so I just want to get right into it. And so I'm going to have to kind of wait here for a second for my, here, there we go. Get out of the Google Slides. And so, kind of before I get into the report, I just wanted to give a little quick overview of Data Studio. Here's the homepage. Talks about connect, visualize, share. Same things we just went over. Within the Data Studio, I just clicked on this gallery. What the gallery is, are these are basically a bunch of pre-created reports that you can just plug in your data and get going right away. And earlier I was talking about I have my own report on here. It's in the community section. It's at like the very, very bottom of this page. And that's because I was actually one of the very first people who got to use Data Studio. Here we go, here's mine. But the point is these reports are awesome. Start here, don't start from scratch. And let's just get into it with the with the worksheet. And so this is the final product. This is kind of what we're going to be working for today. And this is, it says Google Ads Performance Dashboard. And so just a really quick overview. This is looking at a website called the Google Merchandise Store. It's basically, they just sell hoodies and YouTube memorabilia, shirts. And it just says, okay, we're looking at the date. Okay, it's a clear date, it has a clear title. And then, oh, Google Ads. So remember our three: title, date, and data. We have that. And anyways, it looks like this one spent $51,000, got 31,000 clicks, paid about $1.70 per click. And then we can go in and see, okay, of all the different ads, there's the Google brand, there's the apparel, kind of like where did we spend a bunch, and then where did the sales actually come from? And so we can see, okay, of our ads, what actually was good, what actually was bad. And then the point being like, okay, knowing what we know now with the good and the bad, let's spend more on these certain ads and let's spend less on others. And so here's our final report we're working for. But then here is the scrambled report, okay? So this is what it looks like. And this is the kind of the ugly report we're going to be fixing. And so one other thing, I posted a link to this Data Studio dashboard in the chat today. And so if you guys could go and click on that link, you'll be at this exact same page. And so kind of overview this one, we have our title, we have these filters, but then it's sort of like too wide. This chart's going a little bit over the side. And then like this bottom section, I don't know what's going on. It looks like there should be something here. And anyways, this is all actually on purpose. And so what I'm going to be doing here is just going through this worksheet and kind of fixing all of these things. And kind of the reason I chose these 20 different items are, this is, in my opinion, like the 20 most kind of common need to know things when it comes to Google Data Studio. And so how to change a date range, how to share your report. And so kind of how I would suggest doing this is sort of just watch me do it and make all these changes. And then after watching me do it and just kind of seeing a little bit of the techniques I use, then I would suggest you guys go in and do it. Last time I suggested to kind of like play along at home while I was doing it. I would really almost suggest to kind of just watch me do it for the first time through and then do it yourself. And so, okay, let's jump in. I see someone says, I don't see the link. I'll copy this link one more time, just in case. By the way, thanks, Lorraine, for saying that. There's a link. That link should bring you guys to this exact same page. And so step one on the worksheet is make sure you're logged into your Google account. And so I can tell I'm logged into my Google account because right up here, I can see my face. And if you're not logged into your Google account, it's gonna be different. And this is actually a really, really important step. Some people are gonna say, oh, Chris, that's kind of obvious. But not being logged into your Google account is one of the biggest, most common problems I have kind of seen people have when making Data Studio. And so, okay, step one, I already kind of did that one. Now to make a copy of this Data Studio report. And so how I do that is up top, I can either go full screen or make a copy. And how we're going to do this is here's our original data source. And for the new data source, I'm going to keep it the exact same, Google Ads. And this is this is data from a real website, by the way, and a real actual Google Ads account. And then, one other thing I was thinking about too is, sometimes Google Data Studio can be a little slow. And so when you're doing a Zoom presentation with someone, it'll be kind of slow. And right now I'm kind of just like rambling to kind of fill the time, but almost that's a skill in itself, you guys, being able to kind of tell people exactly what they're going to see. Like whenever it's in a situation and the report's loading, what I go to is, okay, here's what it's going to show you once it loads. Okay, anyways, we got our everything loaded. And then the other trick I like to do is I'm going to get the same report up twice. So what I did is I just copied my report link and I pasted it in this sheet. And so this is going to load. And again, it's going kind of slow. But one of the big benefits of doing this, having your one Google Data Studio open in two separate screens, is you don't have to flip from page to page. And so a lot of times, even just going from page 1 to page 2, this is where it can be really slow. And so the less you can flip through pages while doing your Zoom presentations or real world presentations, just the smoother things are going to be, the less you guys will actually have to do that kind of like filling in the gaps while it's loading. And so I'm going to go through this kind of fast. We only have about like 10 minutes or so left. Probably go a little bit late, but again, please ask questions, you guys. I'm going to answer all the questions after this. But okay, we did item number 1, logged in. Item number 2, copy the report, did that. Number 3, change the title. And so what I'm going to do is replace copy of do space class with just my name, Chris B. Do space class, data studio. Okay. So I got my title changed, edit pages in the report. So one of the things that's wrong is there's a page called delete this page. It's just completely empty. Obviously brings nothing to the table. And so what I'm doing here is going up, removing that page. Really just the point, reason I added that item is just, I want you guys to have this idea of there can be multiple pages within one report. Okay, we got that page deleted. Change the report theme. So go from Groovy to default. And so I'm gonna keep it on this report page. But basically, one of the things you'll notice is that report has like a little bit of a hideously ugly background color. And one of the ways you can really edit these reports super fast is in the theme and layout section. And by basically what a theme is a little bit of kind of rules that are applied to every page on your report. And so it has like different colors and text. Anyways, we're on Groovy right now, which is, Groovy is Groovy, but we're going to go to default. And it's going to take a second to load, but boom, already that looks a lot cleaner. Feeling better about this report already. Okay, we went from Groovy to default. Now shorten the size of this template. Okay, it's too wide. I don't like how there's this extra space over here. And so to change the size, we're going to go from theme. Theme is like colors, fonts, layout. This is more just like size. And so with, what do we want? 1620, we actually want to go to 1460. boom, boom. Hey, that looks better over here. And then also by changing that theme, we adjusted both the worksheet page and the report all at once, which is cool. So both of them are kind of a better size. Move a group of components. All right, so this report, this is off the screen. That's no good, especially now that we changed everything. And so what this is kind of 3 different components all in one. So this is a little text box. We have a chart, and then those are on top of a white background. And so I had to select all 3 of those, move them over, but boom, that looks better already. Okay, so change the size of the template, move components, change default date range. Alrighty, so this one we're looking at data from January of 2020. And if you're like me, you're moving on from 2020. It's in the mirror of your mirror. So I'm going to change this to the last 30 days. And so it's cool to know how you did in January of last year. So that way, January of this year, when you're going, you can kind of have a basic idea of, hey, are we doing better? Are we doing worse? Right? And so, okay, we changed that date. Now, next thing we want to do is add a border to a component. And so what this is right here, it's a little filter to where the people, instead of looking at all of the ads, they could just really dial down into one specific ad. And so we want to add a outline border to the report. I accidentally switched off. And so what I'm going to do is click on this one component, and I'm going to go in and show you guys how to edit the style. And so one of the things I want to get across here is every single component has, you can either change data or you can change the style. Data is more for numbers, style is more for what things look like. We can change the text, we can change the checkboxes, but I'm going to go down here and I can see there's a border, right border color, but I'm going to go to add the border to 1. I know that's what all the other ones are. And again, if you know how to change the border, add a border on one item, you're going to know how to change the border on everything. And so, okay, we got that. Change a metric. So we want to go change impressions to clicks. Impressions, that's just how many people saw your ads. Clicks are obviously how many times someone thought your ad was actually interesting and clicked on your site. And so right here, it's kind of showing me every single different option within Google Ads we can look at. So I'm just going to go clicks. And of course, if you're changing the data, that's in the data side. If you're making how it looks, that's in the style side. Okay, change the component order, send to back. Probably could have spelled this one out a little bit more, but I was actually talking about this bottom section here where something is obviously amiss. And what the problem we're facing right here has to do with kind of that this white box is overlapping the important stuff. So I'm going to tell this white box to go all the way to the back. Okay, nice. We see our report. I know the next item on this report is to change this chart. Instead of looking at a campaign, we want to look at an ad group. And so right now we're changing a dimension. Last one, we were changing a metric. And kind of, I confuse metrics and dimensions a lot. This is actually a really core component of Data Studio. I would just say, think of metrics as a number you can measure, metrics measure, and a dimension is kind of everything else. And so sometimes you'll be thinking, is this a metric? Is this a dimension? what I always do, I just ask myself, okay, can I measure it? If so, it's a metric. If not, it's a dimension. Okay, reverse chart direction, change the background. I'm just going to change this background first. I don't like how this has a little gray box behind it. And so we're going to go change the style. And I want to go to the background. I don't even know exactly where all this stuff is. That's why I kind of have to look around each time going in, but changing to transparent background. And transparent, that'll basically kind of like take the color of everything behind it. So we got that. This chart, I don't like how it starts with the 0 conversions and ends with the high. And what happened here was somehow it got sort of flipped. And specifically what I mean is that there is this box reverse x-axis direction. So keep your eyes on the table. I'm going to unselect that box. And so now it's starting, okay, the ads with the most conversions first and the ads with the least conversions later. So it mirrors this same report to the side. Okay, add a comparison metric. This is sort of the last one of actually going in and changing the style or changing the data. And a comparison metric, what that is, up here, there's a good example with conversions that says we have 132, and that's down 97% from last period. So that means from the month before. And so I don't always love comparison metrics, but this report had the comparison metrics to start with. And so I'm going to add them back in. And how you do that is basically on any kind of table, any scorecard, you can go in and say, I also want to have a comparison date range. Right now we're going from none, right? But I'd say, oh, I actually want everything to be compared to that previous period. And so before I click apply here, just take a little middle snapshot. I like how this table looks now. And when I click apply, there's going to be actually twice as many columns here. And so that takes a second to load. And so while it's loading. Okay, the final 5 items here all has to do with sharing your report. So I would say we basically have this report to an acceptable place. It looks good enough. It looks just like it did when we started. And so I want to give someone the ability to view and edit my dashboard, right? So if you just have your report and only you know about it, it's not very good. We got to get everyone on the same page. And so the first thing I'm going to do is go up here, share, and I'm going to add someone who can only view my report but not edit it. And this would probably be like your boss or one of your clients that you're running the Google ads for. And of course, we've been talking about Google ads today, but all of this principles kind of applies to like whether it's Google ads, Google Analytics. So I'm just going to say, I'm going to kind of like make up a email, client@clicktargeter.com. They could view it, boom. And then after that, I want to also add someone edit capabilities. And so this would be like if you had someone else on your team or one of your coworkers who was working on the same report, they could actually go in and edit it, kind of like a Google Slides or a Google Doc or a Google Sheet. Basically, all these same principles apply. It takes a little bit of time, obviously. In fact, I'm just going to skip this step because I don't want it to go too late. But it's the same principle. You go in, share, it'll bring up that little box. You type in the people's email, and then it's, Do you want this person to be able to only view the report? Or do you want this person also to be able to go in and actually make changes? And you guys get the idea. I'm going to close this. Okay, so we've got it. People can see our report. Some people can edit it. Now let's download it and schedule an email. These are really the last two items. And so downloading a report, it's in the same share section, but we want to click on this little drop down arrow and download report. We would click that. This is great for if you want to like print and have an actual copy. And so what I'm going to do is just say, I don't, I really only want to see the report. I don't care about the worksheet. So let's say download as a PDF. PDF, I think that a just printable file. And so that's kind of doing its thing, getting the printable file ready to go. And then the final thing is schedule an email report. And so earlier I showed you guys in the slides how I like to email myself the reports. That way I can never get too surprised. And so how you do that is share, schedule email delivery. And it's going a little bit slow here because it's still kind of thinking about downloading it. And now I'm also telling it to schedule a report. So kind of the more things you tell Data Studio to do at the same time, the slower it goes. But I don't really care how slow it goes because I already know exactly everything I want to tell you guys. And so, okay, email delivery. It's going to be from Chris Beecham. That's whatever account you're logged in as. Then you can basically choose to send it to anyone in the world. And one thing I could do is add a specific subject or message. I like to do this to kind of like tell people exactly what they should do. And again, I'm really want to only see the report and not that instructions on my email. And then I don't want to see it every day. That's a little bit too much. Instead, let's do once a month on this last Thursday. And of course, you can choose instead of Thursday, whatever day of the week, 8 a.m. That's 8 a.m. is actually pretty good in the morning. And so this is all you have to do to get your report automatically emailed out. And then, apologize for going a little long here. I just want these last two items. Okay, we downloaded it. We got it emailed to ourselves. Then repeat step one, but with our own Google Ads account. And so I'm going to click cancel here. Kind of step one, what that was again, is I got to go back into this view mode. So right now we've been editing everything, but step one is just make a copy, of course. That's this button right here. And what's cool about making copies in Google Data Studio is that we've just created this whole report with Google Ads from the Google Merchandise Store. But now I can actually go in and select any of my clients' AdWords accounts. I don't know, this is not actually my business account, so I don't have it all linked up. But the point is that the same way basically you guys can connect to any, once you have your report up and running, it's super duper easy to connect it to an actual like real life Google Ads account that you are operating. And anyways, that's sort of everything for today. I know that was a lot, kind of went pretty fast, especially on that second half where I was doing the report. But the idea is now you guys have all kind of seen me actually go in and change every single thing. You kind of seen how I like to have it two up at the same time. You got a little bit of idea how I sort of delay when the things go slow by telling people what they're about to see. And man, I don't see any questions in the chat, but this would be a good time to ask something. Allie, do you have anything to add?
No, I don't think so. That sounded pretty good.
Cool. One other thing I just want to make a note of is be sure to copy and open this Data Studio dashboard. Kind of one of the things I want to do is make some more of these reports and actually kind of like eventually sell a little worksheet. But right now I'm just having everything for free while I'm still sort of figuring it out, and just help do space, obviously. And so just, I guess what I'm getting at is be sure to make a copy of this report now, because once this Zoom class is over, you're not really going to have access. But also, if you guys do, and for some reason lose access to this report, just send me an email or send me a message on Zoom or on LinkedIn, and I'll be sure to get everyone who attended this class their own copy of the report. And anyways, that is sort of a good note to end on. I guess just be sure next week we're doing sort of another installment in this series. It's going to be Google Data Studio with with Facebook ads. So episode 1 was Google Analytics. We kind of how to make an automatic report of what's going on your website. This week was Google Ads, how to communicate performance of Google Ads. And next week is going to be Facebook ads. I told you Google Ads is the #1 most popular ad platform. Facebook ads is #2. So come back next week, and just want to thank everyone and thank DoSpace. And if there's no other questions, Ali, I'll let you close the class out.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Chris. I'm sure we all learned a lot from that. I know I did. We will see you next week. Thanks for everybody else for joining in with us. Be sure to check out our calendar for any of our other webinars we're holding. We'll see you guys next week.